Imagine you're a game developer in the mid-2000s. You already had a hit, you have a fan base. The logical business move is to give people exactly what they want. So, you play it safe. But George Fan didn't do that. He didn't play it safe. Most people see Plants vs. Zombies as a polished, perfect masterpiece of a game design. But if you look at the development history of Plants vs. Zombies, it's less of a planned masterpiece and more of a lucky mistake. It's a game built on scrap sequels, legal threats, and a lead designer who was constantly getting distracted by his own ideas. From the title that was never supposed to exist to the enemies that were originally supposed to be aliens, the story of Plants vs. Zombies is a series of wrong turns that somehow led to the right decision. Today we will be talking about the secret history of Plants vs. Zombies. To understand the mistake I'm talking about, we have to go back to 2001. George Fan had created a game called Aquarium. It was a cult classic, a frantic, click-heavy aquarium simulator where you fed fish and fought off aliens. It was the pride of PopCap's casual lineup. So, naturally, the mission was make Aquarium 2. George started working on the sequel, but he had a problem. He was bored. He didn't want to just make Fish Tank 2. He started experimenting with a 2-tank system. One tank was for your resources and the other tank was for battle. But the more he worked on it, the more he realized the mechanics were fundamentally broken for an aquarium setting. In an aquarium, things move, fish swim, aliens fly, it's chaotic. At the same time, George was becoming obsessed with Warcraft 3 Tower Defense mode. He loved the strategic placing of static objects and watching it defend a territory. But you can't have a static fish. A stationary fish is just a dead fish. This was the first productive mistake. George decided to abandon the fish entirely. He looked for something that was naturally stationary. He thought of towers, but towers were boring. Then he thought about plants. Plants are alive, they are colorful, and most importantly, they don't move. He pivoted so hard that he effectively killed the most anticipated sequel in PopCap's history to make a game about weedlings. At the time, his peers thought he was crazy. He was throwing away a proven brand for a weird experimental project about sentient vegetables. Even after switching to plants, the game still wasn't Plants vs. Zombies. It was Plants vs. Aliens. George was still using the assets from Aquarium. You had these green sprouts shooting at intergalactic invaders. The vibe was off. The aliens were fast, they had technology, they didn't feel right as an opponent for a slow-growing pea plant. The mistake here was lack of artistic direction. The game was a mess of different styles. One afternoon, George sat down to sketch a new enemy. He didn't have a zombie game in mind. He just wanted something that moved slow enough to justify how long it takes a plant to grow. He drew a zombie with a slightly tilted head and a blank, empty stare. He looked at the sketch and realized this is it. Zombies solved every design problem the game had. They explained why the enemies only moved in one direction. They explained why they were slow. They provided a hilarious contrast to the happy plants. But by making this switch, George had accidentally walked into the most saturated genres in the late 2000s. Zombies were everywhere. Every developer told him that zombie fatigue was real and that he was making a mistake. But George didn't care. He leaned into the brain-dead nature of the enemies, creating a comedy game instead of a horror game. Now we get to the title. For years, the team called the game Dawn of the Dead. It was a perfect pun on George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. They loved it, they made art for it, based their whole vibe around it. Then the legal department stepped in. PopCap's lawyers realized that if they released Dawn of the Dead, they would be sued into the dirt by movie studios. They were told they had to change it fast. The team couldn't agree on a name. As a temporary fix, literally just a name for the folder on their computers, Plants vs. Zombies. They hated it. They thought it was too literal, too boring. They spent weeks trying to find something cooler, but they failed. They ran out of time. They settled. They accidentally picked the most SEO-friendly, descriptive, and iconic title in gaming history because they were too tired to think of anything else. Most games in 2009 came with massive manuals or boring 20 minutes tutorials. Plants vs. Zombies had neither. George Fan had a philosophy that tutorials were a design failure. He wanted the players to learn without knowing they were being taught. This led to the mistake of simplicity. Critics at that time wondered if the game was too easy. There was only one lane. one plant, one zombie. But this mistake is actually why the game became a global phenomenon. My grandma could play it. A 5-year-old could play it. By making the game too simple at the start, they accidentally created a perfect gateway drug for the strategy genre. It was designed to be a casual game, designed to be a hardcore strategy game that was accidentally accessible to everyone on Earth. So, was Plants vs. Zombies a mistake? Technically, yes. It was a failed sequel, a legal pivot, a placeholder name, and a design that broke every rule of hardcore gaming at the time.